Good afternoon. My name is Professor Harmon, and I'm going to be talking to you about library resources for your Business Management 371 class. Today we're going to introduce you to library resources for the class, discover tools available to help you access the library resources, and talk a little bit about how to search and find stuff in the library. We're going to have a special focus on resources that are available to you electronically, so ebooks, electronic journal articles, and because the library building is technically closed, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can receive research help in an online environment. Before I begin any research project, I like to talk a little bit about what our assignment resources and requirements are, and that kind of sets the stage for what we're required to do. So your assignment is a group assignment as I understand it, and you are looking at a leader and then also kind of comparing that to some of the major academic theories connected to management. At the very end of the day, it is my understanding that you are to have 6 total sources, and 2 of those sources can be pulled from your textbooks. The types of information that you can use, you are not limited to just using peer-reviewed journal articles, so you have a wide range of access. I know there's some specific language about not using only internet sources, but I will show you how to find quality resources through the online library, and then also think a little bit critically about some of the things you're finding on the open web. One thing I did want to start with is if you are struggling or your group is struggling to find resources for this project, you can reach out and access a librarian. So you can email us. We have chat available 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to midnight on Saturday and Sunday. You can also email me directly, and we can also talk about virtual appointments if you and your group need to consult with me in a little bit more depth. One thing I did want to discuss is the research process. So you start out with an idea. So you probably have your leader in mind, and maybe you're kind of playing around with some ideas as to what the management theory that you're interested in investigating. Now, a lot of people just jump into their research, but one thing I wanted to point out is the value of background information. So when we go out on the web and we're searching through things, we find a lot of students start with Wikipedia. And when you're looking for background information, so you know a little bit more about your topic, Wikipedia is completely appropriate. Now, I probably wouldn't use Wikipedia as one of my end sources, but to learn a little bit more about what's going on, using Wikipedia is completely and absolutely appropriate. Once you know a little bit more about your topic, you're going to refine your topic. Then you're going to select your research tools. So if you're going to use books, you're going to use journal articles. And then you can begin to actually search within the library resources or on the web, if that is where you are going. Then you actually want to read and analyze the information. You will ingest that and write up your project or paper. And then finally, you want to end that with a citation of sources. I did want to talk to you a little bit about the information universe. The internet is broken up into what I refer to as the visible web and the invisible web. The visible web is the stuff that you can go online and access for free. So the Wikipedia, these things on, government websites and, blogs and such. And while there is good information out there, the vast amount of information is held behind paywalls and is what we refer to as the invisible web. My favorite example of this is Netflix. If you need to access Netflix, you have to have a password. Someone has to be paying for access. And I kind of refer to the library as kind of the academic Netflix. We pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year so that you have access to the full text of the materials that you need to be successful in your courses. Now, within that realm of the invisible web, the library provides you access to a number of databases that you might find to be helpful. I'm gonna highly recommend one called Business Source Premier. It has a lot of journal articles in it centered around business. You're gonna be able to find a lot of things related to business theory in this database. You also may find bits and pieces on the individual leaders you've selected. Academic Search Premier is another great database. You are probably familiar with this one. It has a little bit of everything, but not a lot of anything. And so you may have some limited success with that. Also, you do have access to the Wall Street Journal, and that can be a helpful place as well. Finally, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Google Scholar. Now, Google Scholar, you can access the database for free, but a lot of times the content is not available for free. And so I'm going to show you how you can actually go through and access that content for free. Now, whether you're using a journal article offline or you're accessing library ebooks offline, you are going to have to log in. So the login protocols for us are when you click on an individual database or ebook, you're going to see this login with network username and password. You're going to click there, and then when you're asked to log in, you are going to log in with your USC network username and password. Now, your username is the first part of your email. So I'm Deborah T at usca.edu. I'm going to put Deborah T in. But instead of putting my email password, I'm going to put my Blackboard password in. If you have problems logging in, make sure you reach out to us and we can talk to you about solutions for logging in. Before we log into the databases and start searching around there, I did want to give you a framework to use to analyze the quality of resources and the open web, so that visible web. What I generally look at when I'm looking at resources on the open web is I consider the authority, the bias, and the currency of the piece. So first is the authority. Who is authoring it? If you can identify an individual, and maybe you found something by the U.S. Small Business Administration, that is an authority. That is a group of individuals that speaks, that is respected within the field. So I would feel pretty good about using things from the Small Business Administration. Now, if I found a random blog, that authority is a little bit more dubious. I might not know who that author is, or they may not have the credentials to exhibit themselves as an expert, so I might second guess that. Also look at the bias of a resource. Is the intention of the source to inform you? Is it to entertain you? Or is it to sell you something? High quality resources are generally very text heavy, and the intent is to inform us. If you see a lot of ads or if you see things trying to sell you something, look a little bit more closely at that resource and see if this really is a quality source. The final piece is currency. So currency is basically looking at the age of a resource, and academic conversations and conversations, period, change over time. And so if you're writing something on a current leadership style and how it's implemented in modern day business spheres, you're going to want to be looking for stuff in the last couple of years. Obviously, something from 40 or 50 years ago is going to be a different environment, and so that may impact the information value that you find in your resources. Now I'm going to switch gears and show you how to access the library resources. From the USC Aiken homepage, there are a couple ways to access the library homepage. You can either switch over academics, and under academic resources, the library is the first link. Alternately, you can scroll down the page, and down towards the bottom there is a link to the Greg Graniteville Library. Once you click on that page, that is going to take you to the library's homepage, and here we're going to be able to access a number of our resources. The main toolbox you're going to need is in the center of the page. But before we get there, I did want to point a couple of things out. Remember earlier how I mentioned that you could get help from a librarian? You can either click on the Ask a Librarian button. That will take you to our overall page on ways to be able to get help. You can chat with us 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to midnight. You can also set up an appointment with us or email us. We also have a page that gives you more of an overview of off-campus access issues. And so if you forget how to log in from off-campus, this page does give you an overview. I'm now going to talk to you about finding library resources through the Greg Graniteville Library. Now, this toolbar in the middle of the page is your main access point for resources. And one thing I want you to be aware of as you're approaching this search, because we have stuff that we can find on individuals, so Richard Branson, Vince Lombardi, But we also need to find things on the academic theories. Odds are you're not going to find that perfect article that is talking about Richard Branson and his communication style. A lot of that you're going to find perhaps stuff on Richard Branson, and then you can find academic literature that talks about communication style, leadership styles, and you can kind of bridge those together. So while you can try to find information on Richard Branson and, communication style, I will encourage you to look for things both separately on that individual, but also try to find things separately on that academic theory. And I'm going to show you some examples as we go through. One thing I did want to note is since the library building is closed, we're going to be looking primarily through electronic books. To limit your search to ebooks, instead of going directly into this tab, I'm going to recommend that you click on Advanced Search. And then once you're on the Advanced Search page, there is a link to material type. And if you go here and scroll all the way to the bottom, you can limit to ebooks. And then I can come in here and I can type in some terms. I'm going to try simply with communication and leadership. Spelling things correctly does help in the databases. And then I'm going to hit submit. And then it's going to show me what different books I have available that talk about communication and leadership that are available as electronic books. Now, if I wanted to access this book, for example, Leadership Communication, How Leaders Communicate and Communicators Lead in Today's Global Environment, what I'm going to do is open the book, and in the middle of the page there will always be this Connect To link. Make sure you find the one from Aiken, or if it says USC All Libraries, you can click on that as well. Once I click on that, it's going to ask me to log in with my network username and password, and then I'm going to go through the process of logging in. Once you are in, it's going to give you some options for accessing the individual book. I can see here that I can read the book online, so to read the book, I will click on that. I do not actually recommend that you download books. A lot of times, when you download books, you have to download alternate software, and it is generally kind of a pain. But if you read online, you can access a web-based version of the book, and a lot of times you can download up to 100 pages of an individual book. But this allows you to access a full book online, and then you can even search within the book and find where individual terms are mentioned within the text, and then switch into those individual pages. I did also want to mention that you can go in and look for things on your individual. So Vince Lombardi, for example, you can look for materials on him. I did want to mention that for the other two individuals, including Richard Branson, there are a number of works on them. But for Vincent Lombardi, there are not a lot of books, but there does seem to be some promising books. For example, this one, which I can connect through to Aiken from eBook Central. That is a very quick overview on how to find ebooks through the library. The next thing I'm going to focus on is how to access the library journal articles. What I'm going to recommend is that you go through the research guides rather than the databases. What the research guides are, we have created subject-oriented environments to really help empower you to be independent researchers by making recommendations for the best databases within that field. There is a business research guide, so I'm going to choose business and hit go. And then that's going to take me to the research guides. Now, since we're looking for journal articles, I'm going to click on the Find Articles tab. And here I'm going to find some of the major databases for business. The databases that I'm going to recommend as a reminder are Business Source Premier, Google Scholar, Academic Search Premier, and Wall Street Journal. While there are a number of databases on this page, some of them are very specific and don't focus on journal articles. I'm going to start by searching Business Source Premier, which is, I think, where you're going to have a lot of success. And here I can go through and begin my search. But I also want to try to find stuff written by experts in the business field on these different leadership theories. So I'm looking for these academic conversations, and they are publishing these scholarly journal articles on these topics. So I was very interested in communication style and leadership, so I'm going to type that in. And then I can scroll down the page and I have some options for some limitations. Since I want to look at things that are somewhat recent, I am going to limit the year to 2000 to the present. And then I could limit to full text and scholarly peer reviewed, but I'm going to leave that open. And I'm going to go ahead and search. Now, if you get these results and you do decide that you want to focus on full text or scholarly peer-reviewed journals, you can limit that at this time. If this database looks a little bit familiar to you, it is put out by the same company that does Academic Search Premier, but this is looking at some different content because this database does specialize in business literature. Now, for example, if I wanted to look at relational communication messages and leadership styles in supervisor-employee relationships, it does appear that there is a PDF full text available, so I can open up this article. The first thing I'm going to recommend is that you go down and you read through the abstract. This is going to give you an overview of what the article is about. And then I'm going to be able to either email the article to myself, or I can open up the article and download it directly onto my desktop. If I do choose to email it to myself, I can click on the email button, add my email address, and then you can tell it to send you a citation. Now, I will warn you about the citations. They very often have errors, and so if you use this as a starting point, do make sure that you are checking it against proper APA style. Now, sometimes when we look through here, instead of seeing a PDF full text, sometimes what we'll see is this thing called Full Text Finder. Now, what Full Text Finder does is it attempts to connect us to the full text of the article. So I can either click on Full Text Finder here, or I can open up the individual article and access it here. And here I can also read the abstract and see if this is worth my time. Now, when I click on Full Text Finder, effectively what it's going to do is it's going to open up a bridge and attempt to connect me to the full text article in another one of our databases. Now, sometimes you can go through, and I'm going to show you an example in a second when it directly connects to the full text. Generally, if you have received this and you can request something through interlibrary loan, which is actually recommended by your professor, but unfortunately, because of these unique times, interlibrary loan is dependent on other libraries lending us journal articles. And presently, because many libraries are closed due to COVID-19, we are having to suspend interlibrary loan. So if you run across an article like this, you may need to just pass on it for the time being. Now, that doesn't mean that if it's just Full Text Finder that you should automatically pass on it. I encourage you to click on the Full Text Finder, and sometimes you can click on an individual article, and then you'll see this Get Full Text. And you might be surprised at how often you'll see Get Full Text. Now, when you open this up, this means that we have another the full text of this article in another one of our databases. So I can go through and view this article at Science Direct, and it's going to take me directly into that other database, and then I can download that directly onto my desktop, or if the database provides for it, I can email it to myself. If you are searching for articles and you're getting really frustrated because you're not able to find the full text, do make sure you reach out to a librarian. We can make some recommendations for search terms and maybe some more appropriate databases as you go through and look for your research. Now, one thing I did want to show you how to access was a database called Google Scholar. So now, while Google Scholar is a database that anyone can access, a lot of times the full text is not available in Google Scholar. So I'm going to go ahead and try my search again and see what comes back. And again, be open to playing with other terms and terminology. You don't want to try to put too many words in. The databases are very literal, and so make sure you're utilizing words that professionals in your field would be using, the kind of terminology they would be using, and then try not to put too many extra filler words in there. Now, when I come here, one of the great things that you can do is, even though the full text is not always available, what you can do is connect up to the full text. In order to connect up to the full text available through the Greg Graniteville Library, what you can do is click on the little, they call it a hamburger, in the upper left-hand corner, and then go down to Settings. Once you're in Settings, there is an option for Library Links. If you click on Library Links, you can search for University of South Carolina, Aiken. I have already done it. And once you find it, you can check the box next to it and then save it. And what that is basically saying is, Google Scholar, I want you to connect me into USC Aiken Library's resources. Now, of course, you'll have to log in to be able to access these, but one of the great things is it's going to then add in this full text finder so you can access the full text of the article. Now, for example, if I wanted to access this, I can click on Full View, and it's going to take me through to our library resource and will connect me into the full text of the article, and then I can simply download that to my desktop. So that was a pretty quick overview of how to access library resources, whether they be ebooks or journal articles. Again, if you do have any questions, we are still on every day, and we are here and willing to help you. We are just not physically in the library. Again, happy searching. My name is Professor Harmon, and you can reach me directly even through deborah.t@usca.edu.